Good morning. This year, the month of March has been the poster child for religious pluralism. We started the month already in the middle of the Christian holy season of Lent, which began on February 18th and continues through Easter. The Hindu springtime festival of Holi was on March 4th. The Jewish festival of Purim was this past week on March 3rd. And for the pagans among us, the spring equinox is coming up on March 20th. Today is International Women's Day, of course, a holiday all around the world. And we are already in the middle of the holy month of Ramadan, which started on the evening of February 17th and will conclude on March 19th. Here at the Unitarian Society, we have recognized and celebrated all of these holidays at one time or another over the years because the value of pluralism is deeply embedded in the history and practice of our Unitarian Universalist faith. And we don't just celebrate these holidays as religious tourists, as holidays important out there in the world, but because we have a great deal of religious diversity within Unitarian Universalism as well. We have members from a variety of backgrounds, family structures, traditions, and histories. And as such, it is part of the joy and challenge of Unitarian Universalism to lift up, celebrate, and share the meaning we find in the traditions we carry with us, as well as being open to learning and growing from our exposure to traditions shared by others. I say joys and challenges because while the sharing joy part of interfaith work is obvious, I hope, as your minister, it can be a challenge to figure out how to do justice to the deep histories, wisdoms, and sometimes controversies within such a diversity of traditions. I try with deep humility to invite us into a space that allows us for deeper engagement than we might get from the obligatory Instagram post from our elected representatives. Although, to be honest, I'm thrilled just to see an Instagram post from our representatives as a reminder that we are still, in fact, a pluralistic nation. In the Unitarian Universalist Association's most recent articulation of the values we hold in common among us, pluralism is described in this way. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. So this morning, with the help of Ellen and drawing upon the Muslim colleagues, professors, friends, and writers I have encountered over the years, we are spending some time with Ramadan, a timely and tender place to spend our hour together. As the current war in the Middle East that began with the bombing of Iran on February 28th continues into its second week with no sign of abating. Building interfaith understanding, upholding that value of pluralism grounded in love. In this moment when Christian nationalism is on the rise and religion is once again being used as a cudgel to divide us, this is a gift that we can offer the world. Sometimes I feel like we are that young woman in the poem holding the door open for everyone in the bathroom at Sears, trying our best to bridge worlds with kindness. When it comes to interfaith work, one of the people who impacted me the most was a professor I had in seminary, Dr. Farid Issac. Dr. Issac is a South African progressive Muslim scholar who grew up under apartheid, and interreligious dialogue has been a big part of his work. I took his Introduction to the Quran class in seminary, and I highly recommend his book On Being Muslim for a glimpse into his life and thinking. In it, he says, "I love my geographical home, South Africa, and much as I am committed to my religious home, Islam, I enjoy being abroad. I feel quite comfortable with other cultures and followers of other religious persuasions, as well as those who have none. I am, in fact, desperate to understand others, to be enriched by them, and sincerely believe that the only meaningful life is one lived with one's spiritual doors and windows wide open to strangers. A while back, after 9/11, when the Afghan Taliban was everywhere in the news, he gave an interview to a Catholic news publication and talked about the necessity of dialogue in a time when Islam was viewed only through the lens of extremism and as being at war eternally with the West. A reporter asked, "What can ordinary people do to help Christian-Muslim relations?" And he replied, "People need to begin to deepen their encounters with others. Interfaith dialogues are a good place to start." But then he went on to be somewhat critical of the tendency of interfaith work to be superficial, focusing only on pleasantries rather than having more substantial conversations. "Is there life after tea?" he asked. It's true that sometimes they can seem like somewhat irrelevant forums for polite show and tell. You meet with these other nice people and show them your religion's nice verses about peace and justice and living in harmony, and then you get a nice pat on your back from the other people in the interfaith forum. Difficult things, he said, don't usually get dealt with when the dialogue is stuck in that level. And from time to time at interfaith events, I have felt what he is describing, although it feels like something approaching UU heresy to admit that. Without real relationships cultivated between people who are willing to talk about the difficult realities of the world around us, interfaith presence can be used more as a backdrop or a prop rather than something more meaningful. Sometimes as a Unitarian Universalist, without a tradition based in a holy text or scripture, I wonder what my role is on the panel of interfaith leaders. Am I just there to hold open the door of pluralism and nod politely as words are exchanged without anyone really coming into conversation with one another? But there is something about interfaith dialogue that holds a deeper promise, which is why Dr. Isaac and I don't give up on it. He goes on to say, "But despite such limitations, at the end of the day, we don't have an alternative to engaging in conversation. The village of the world that we live in today is completely intertwined," he says. "You can't unbake the cake of globalization. You can't separate the sugar from the flour, from the water, from the vanilla, from the cream. What you do to Muslims in the world today, you do to Christians. And what you do to straight people, you do to gay people. What you do to black people, you do to white people. The essential conditionness of humanness today," he says, "is interconnectedness." Honoring this interconnectedness, staying in the room together until something cracks open and makes peace possible, this is what we must do for as long as it takes. And perhaps our gift that we bring as Unitarian Universalists to the conversation is not found in relying on a similarity between sacred texts, but rather the commitment we practice each and every Sunday when we celebrate that religious pluralism among us, honoring the ways we are different, not just the same, lovingly, beautifully, humanly different, rather than trying to convert and conform to a single truth. Perhaps our gift is our long-standing practice of holding the door open for everyone, after all. Not because there are any guarantees that interfaith dialogue will end all wars and bring about world peace, but because keeping the faith in our tradition means holding out hope for the possibility, the vision of a beloved community where all people are valued and safe, even if the road is uncertain and we may not see the results in our lifetime. Which brings me to the holy month of Ramadan. When going through my readings for this holiday, I came across an essay by Harun Moghul, a Pakistani-American author, talking about the importance of the story of Noah in the Quran. As Ellen mentioned, Islam and Judaism and Christianity all share many of the same core stories. In Islam, Jesus is considered as one of the prophets, and in some ways, Unitarian Universalism's historical relationship with Jesus might be more similar to Islam's. This understanding that Jesus is not a divine being, but a human messenger, can be shared across these histories. There are other interesting connections between Unitarian Universalism and Islam, which will, I'm sure, turn up in a future sermon. So in Islam, Jesus was a prophet, as was Moses, as was Noah, whose story was much more important in the Islamic tradition than I realized. Mogul starts off this essay with this metaphor for Ramadan. Ramadan's a lot like a Russian nesting doll, except inside one is another larger one. So tucked inside Ramadan are the blessed last 10 nights. And one of these, in turn, is the night of power, the night the Quran was first revealed. The same Quran described it as better than 1,000 months, that night. If you find that night and you stay awake in communion with God, the spiritual consequence, he says, the spiritual consequence upon you is as if you'd worshipped for 83 years, or roughly 83 years, or roughly a lifetime of prayer in one night. The challenge, however, is that no one really agrees on which of the last 10 nights is the night of power. So Mogul says you pick one and you stay up and you pray and you hope that perhaps you've picked the right night to do so, but you never really know. But what does this have to do with Noah? And as a reminder, because it's important to this story, according to the biblical accounts, people lived a lot longer back then than they do today. So Mogul tells it like this. Noah is one of the most revered figures in the Islamic tradition, but he sticks out principally for what he couldn't get done. For 950 years, as the Quran measures it, Noah did a lot of preaching, but not a lot of converting. He couldn't even get his whole nuclear family to go along. And then God flooded the part of the world where he lived. The Quran never suggests it was a global catastrophe, and only he and a few of his followers were spared. And Mogul goes on to say, but when early Muslims heard about his life, and this was telling, they didn't zero in on the apparent futility. They were jealous. They asked, how is it fair that he got to worship God for almost a millennium? Well, they have at most 60 or 70 years the fortunate person of the time could expect. How could a man from their time, they wondered, earn heaven when a man from his time could point to a far more worshipful record? And so Muhammad pointed to the night of power. That one night when you could mass a lifetime of prayer in one evening. Mogul explains that the night of power is an opportunity to pray equal to Noah, not because it will necessarily get you anywhere tangible. Ramadan, he says, is about learning to endure, to pursue what you believe to be the right thing, even if you are not sure that it will work. Just as Noah built the ark without any guarantees that other people would believe him, even his own children. It is about acting from your conscience, from your pursuit of truth and goodness and becoming a better person, rather than any guaranteed outcome. He says, you can believe passionately that there's a cause worth fighting for, bringing people of different faiths together, undoing generational scars of racism and bigotry, which we keep scratching and opening. And yet you might, time and again, get nowhere. And yet you keep going. Ramadan Mubarak, which means blessed Ramadan. For Mogul, the blessing of Ramadan is in the faithful attempt more than the achievement. Dr. Isaac says something similar about his personal experiences of Ramadan in his book on being Muslim. He talks about how the prayers and practices of Ramadan are challenging, but that the point is not perfection. Much like in the Time for All Ages that Charla read earlier in the service, there is this generosity around those expectations. Isaac quotes Surah 185, in which after talking about the practice of fasting, the Quran talks about the exceptions, and it is said, Allah intends ease for you, not hardship. Isaac goes on to write, the fact that we will not or cannot do all is not a legitimate reason for refusing to do a bit. It is not completeness we are out to achieve. It is progress, My goal is not to become a perfect Muslim, at least not this Ramadan. It is only to ensure that the next Ramadan finds me a bit closer to Allah and a somewhat more pleasant person than this one did. Facing all that we are facing right now, the rising authoritarianism at home, the wars abroad, the climate crisis everywhere. Facing all of this, learning more about Ramadan has been a reminder that the goal is not and never has been perfection, but just to keep orienting ourselves toward what is good and right as best as we can, to make the effort and keep going, even when we don't know exactly what the results will be. This evening, when the sun dips below the horizon a little later than yesterday because of daylight savings time, this evening I will be joining my Muslim siblings at the mosque in Galita for an interfaith iftar dinner, the breaking of the fast that happens after sunset. Imam Wael Higazi, in his invitation, phrased it like this: "This special time offers not only a shared meal, but also an opportunity for reflection, meaningful dialogue, and friendship across faith traditions. Our interfaith iftar is intended to strengthen relationships, foster mutual understanding, and celebrate the diversity of our Santa Barbara community. I can't think of a way I would rather spend my evening." This invitation was sent out weeks ago, before any of us knew that a war would once again be breaking over us. I am grateful now more than ever for that invitation, to be able to gather and share our ongoing hope for a more peaceful world. And so, I have printed out a Ramadan greeting on behalf of our congregation, and it is out at the membership table in the garden. And if you would like to go and sign your name and share your greetings that I can bring with us to the Islamic Society, I would be honored to do so, as a gesture of peace and goodwill from our community to theirs, a reminder that we are committed to building a loving and respectful pluralistic world, and that we are in it together for as long as it takes. Ramadan Mubarak. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.